Hello and welcome back. This is part 3 of Class C Subnetting examples. We went through quite a number of steps in the previous two. This time I'm going to try to make it much shorter. So the first thing to look at is Class C, because we check at the first octet, it's in that range, the Class C. So go back to the previous video, it tells you how to do that. Then we check Class C is supposed to be 24, but here we have 26. We have 2 bits. That means the first 3, the n, we don't touch it, but the last one, instead of having 8 zeros, now we add 2. So we have 1, 1, and then 8 zeros together. And if it is 1, 1, that means you have n equal to 2 and h equal to 6. So the first thing to calculate is the block size. The block size is going to be, first of all, let's just check what we have here. The block size is a binary number, and that binary number gives you 127 plus 64, that gives you 128. Okay, block size, 128 plus 64, that is 192. The 192 will answer the first question, which is the block size, and the block size was 256 minus 192, and that gives you 64. So a block size of 64. But how many blocks then we have? You can tell from 256 there are 4, but let's calculate from here. 2 to the power of n, which is 2 to the power of, here we've got 2, and that gives you 4 subnets. Okay, if you have 4 subnets, and what is in each subnet? It's going to be 2 to the power of h minus 2, 2 to the power of 6 minus 2, and 2 to the power of 6 is 64. And if you subtract 2, you have 62 IPs, or valid hosts, in each subnet. That means 4 of them. Then if you put a diagram, a table, and in that table, if you divide it into 4, 2 here and 2 there, we have 4 networks because we have 4 over there. Then the first one is our valid host, and the last one is our broadcast address. So if you just use the first 2 addresses to show, and then you can fill the rest. So we call here subnet 1, subnet 2, subnet 3, subnet 4, and then this is the network address. That means the first address that cannot be used, and this will be your broadcast address, and that's the last one which we cannot use. The network starts from here. So the first IP is 192.168.1.0, and you know this is a block size of 64. So if you use a box like this, and if you start from 0 and end at 255, or start from 1 to 256, they're the same. If you divide them into 2, it will be, each one will be 128 and 128. But that's only 2. What we need is 4. The 4 will divide the 128 into 2 and the 128 into 2. So if we divide here, that's going to become 64. This is going to become 64. Here 64. Here 64. So 4 of them. So if I start the first one from 0 to 63, 0 to the middle, that's the one. Let's do the center to make it easy. 0 up to here, and then if you check the normal numbers, will be 1 up to 64 to 128 to 192, and then it's going to be 64, 128, and then 128, 192, and then 256. So that will be your normal numbers. But for networking, we're starting from 0. So if we start 0, 1, 2, 3, and 64, that means one step back. That gives you 63. The first IP will be 192.168.1.0, and then the last one will be 192.168.1.63, and then after the 63 you have 64, and then you continue. That will be 127. So that IP will be 192.168.1.64, and this will be 192.168.1.127. And after 127 you have 128, and that goes up to 191, and from 991 will you have 192 after that, and then it continues this way. So 0.1.2, you continue all your IP addresses, but this is only 64. So up to where can you go? You can go up to 63 because you started from 0, and that gives you a block of 64. As if you are counting 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. These are 10 numbers. They're starting from 0 up to 9. They're 10 digits. But if you start from 1, 2, 3, you go all the way to 10. This is again 10 numbers. But they're starting from 1 and ending at number 10. So you have to check how you count. Very important in networking. And the best thing is, when you know one network where it ended, the next number is where the other one starts. So I would just quickly go to here, 192.168.1.64. And if I add 64, another 64, that will give me 192.168.1. One step back again, don't get confused, 127. If I know 127, the next one starts from 192.168.1.128. And if I add a 64 over there, it's going to be 192.168.1.191. And then from 191, I can go one step up, and that gives me 192. And then from 192, if I add another 64, it gives me 192.168.1.255. Now, if I ask you, what is the first valid host on network 1? That's going to be after the 0, which is here. That's going to be 192.168.1.1. And if I ask you the last valid host, so if the last valid host is over here, if it's over here, last valid, and this is the first valid host. If I ask you these questions, let's fill actually that as a table, and the rest you can do. And the last one for here, which you can use, is between before 63, which is going to be 192.168.1.62. You can give it a router, to a server, to a PC, but this one you cannot. This is the broadcast address, 192.168.1.63. If I ask you, what is the last valid host for network 2? This is network 2. It starts from 64 and it ends at 127. The last valid is let's complete 192.168.1.126. And if I ask you what's the first valid host in subnet 3, this is subnet 3. It starts from 128. The first valid will be 192.168.1.129. Second one, 130. Third one, 131. So that way. And the last valid host for this subnet, it's going to be before the 191, which is the broadcast. So we have 192.168.1.190. And for this one, we have the first IP we can use as 192.168.1.193. But the last one is 192.168.1.254. So this is 4 IP addresses. And so let's summarize. In 3 examples, I have shown you class C and how you subnet it. In summary, the first thing to check is the first octet, what range is falling. Then you look back where the ranges are in the other videos. When you decide what class that is, then you look at the class A, class B, class C. For class A, we have network and hosts. For class B, we have network, hosts. And for class C, we have network, and hosts. These are all ones, I mean. So 8 here, 8 here, 8 here. That will give you 24. So original is 24 for class C. And then you say, okay, if the original is class C /24, what do I have here? 2 IPs. And then you say 2 IPs have been subnetted. You look at, this is all ones, these are ones, these are ones. This, instead of becoming all 8 ones, 2 of them are now, all 8 zeros, 2 of them are now ones. So for example, 2 ones here and the rest zeros. Then from there you take your n becoming 2, it gives you the number of subnets, and the h, this formula gives you the number of valid hosts. You calculate your block size, use this box if you like, then create this table, and then let the first one be your first usable IP, last one last usable IP. That way you have class C subnetting.